Alright, so we're all on the same page here. This video is not about true crime, which is like 99% associated with murder. Instead, I'm focusing on crime as a genre in film and TV. But yes, there will be some slight overlap. But as someone that also loves true crime probably way too much, I always find myself consuming fictional narrative crime stories in all media, from movies to shows to books and comics. The genre has always had a grip on me, and as I've absorbed media throughout my lifetime, I've realized a lot of the most popular works in fiction tend to be in the crime genre. So, what the hell do we love so much about crime? History lesson. The start of our obsession. Alright, if you're not a history buff, that's okay. You can just go ahead and skip to the next chapter. Our obsession started back in the early 1800s when we began to make metropolises throughout the world, whether it be London in Great Britain, Paris in France, or New York in the United States. The world was becoming this more close-knit place. Instead of tiny villages and towns where you knew everybody and had neighbors next to you, you now had thousands of people you didn't know with neighbors that lived next to you, above you, and even underneath you. And with bigger populations, that means crimes had skyrocketed. Especially if the people you pass on the street didn't know you, you had a greater opportunity to get away with your crimes since no one will be able to personally identify you. These cities responded to rise in crime with the creation of police forces, with London creating their police system in 1829 and New York creating theirs in 1845. We'll come back to this in a second, as we step into the literary world. In the late 20s is when we see our first hints of crime stories, but they were often surrounded in supernatural elements involving ghosts, mixed with a lot of revenge elements as well. But in 1841, a little author by the name of Edgar Allan Poe created what most people consider the first detective story called The Murders in the Rue Morgue. In fact, detective wasn't even a word that existed at the time of the short story's creation and publication. But to jump back into reality, the big boom in the creation of detective crime thrillers really came with the rise of big cities. And as art always does, it reflects life. So these stories were used as a way to comment on metropolitan societies. And if we look at the time when this story came out, it was right after London created their police force and right when New York was beginning to create theirs. And funny enough, this story takes place in Paris, who already had a police force since 1667. And if we take a bit of a further look into the late 1800s and hone in onto London specifically, there's something really historically important that took place. One of the first documented serial killers came strolling into town, murdering prostitutes, and it made headlines all around the world, captivating the population in its endless mystery, as the people followed none other than London's police force awaiting for this person to be captured. And of course, that famous serial killer was none other than Jack the Ripper. This wasn't just a turning point for history, but also media, as authors saw how captivated people were to this story. And then next thing you know, the big boom in detective stories began shortly after Ripper's murders in the late 1880s, going into the 1920s, seeing a big increase in detective stories, from novels to pulp magazines to even comics, riding this wave all the way into the 60s. And to look quickly back at the 1920s with the first few crime stories, we can see with The Rector of Albi written by Stein Steinson, yeah, I know, real creative name. The story was based off an actual murder that happened, which again shows how life imitates art. And to continue further down the timeline, after Edgar Allan Poe created the first detective character and story, others followed suit with the creation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes in 1877, and the many works of Agatha Christie, who is actually the author with the most sold books in history. So this is a long-winded way of me saying we have always had a fascination with crime. And as we take a look at today's media through television and film, we can see that it is still a defining genre people love and respect. In December of 2023, Variety made an article citing the top 100 shows of all time, and out of the 100, 18 of them were in the crime genre. And in the top 10 alone, 4 of the shows were in the genre. And just the year before that, they did the same thing but with movies. And out of the 100 movies, a whopping 29 of them were in the crime genre. Now, I think there are 4 big reasons why we as an audience love to watch crime shows and movies. Reason 1, we like fucked up shit. Deep down inside, we are morbidly curious to see why people do such heinous things. It doesn't even have to be violent. We are curious on how drug empires grow, how scams on the stock market work, how con artists trick people, or how burglars steal things. It's as simple and straightforward as that. We are fascinated by these underworlds and how they operate, how their cultures are, how their day-to-day lives are affected by their source of income, how their relationships with people are created or destroyed, and most importantly, how anyone could fall into such a lifestyle. There's something that makes us not want to turn away from these questions because there are endless possibilities to why a person enters these worlds, coupled with the endless worlds of crime there are to visit. Reason 2, we like puzzles. If you consume a lot of crime media, you probably love the thrill of a good mystery, and like any good mystery, it's a puzzle. And if it's written well, you are constantly trying to guess where the story goes, how a character is going to react to an event, how motivations will play out, how damning are the consequences going to be. So you see, the puzzle isn't just the story, it's the characters, it's the symbolisms, it's the whys and the hows. We love trying to piece together everything to fully understand and realize the scope of the situations being placed right in front of us, which gives us a sense of excitement in the same way we like watching horror films or action films. Obviously, we don't want to be chased by Mike Myers or get shot at by terrorists, but it excites us to see it be depicted as we sit down and shove chips in our mouth.
Damn, that shit good.
And the constant tension of crime media heightens our desire to seek out and gain the answers we are looking for. Reason 3, the satisfaction of justice. As much as deep down inside, we like seeing the darker side of life, I think what we love more is seeing pieces of shit get taken down. There's something so satisfying in seeing someone who does evil acts get defeated. That's why revenge stories have been around literally since biblical times, going back to the book of Genesis with the story of Simon, Levi, and Dinah, and in Greek mythology with Atreides and Thyestes. If anything, we have probably more of an obsession with revenge stories than any other type of media on this planet. There's something so human about wanting to see other humans strive and see the people who destroyed their life or aspects of their life be held accountable. Just think about the few times you've seen a show or movie and the person seeking revenge doesn't get it. Don't you get pissed off? Don't you feel like your time has been wasted? Don't you wish you would have just watched something else instead? Of course you have. Reason 4, we wish we could do it. The biggest reason we love crime media comes down to this. It shows our darker side. Come on, just between you and me, I'll keep your secret. Haven't you been cut off on the road by some ass fuck driving a BMW and you wish you could just get out of the car on a red light and break his nose? Haven't you gone to bed after a long day of work getting yelled at by your boss and think about how nice it would be to just smack them upside the head or shove a sock in their mouth to shut them up? Haven't you been so broke that you've thought about taking money from some piece of shit person that's wronged you or others? Have you even just been wronged and want to do something about it, but are too afraid of the consequences? Of course you have. We all have. We wish we could be rich. We wish we could have the power to be respected or even feared. We wish we could get out of our boring day-to-day routines and live an exciting life. We simply wish we could be more. So when you see Walter White, a man who has been pushed around his whole life, get cancer and is on the brink of losing his house due to the financial crash, we all look at him and go, yeah man, I get it. We look at him in awe as he screams at his boss and quits, as he blows up that asshole's expensive car, when he kicks those punks bullying his kid, and we cheer when he makes a shitload of money. A study done by Oracle in October of 2021 states 76% of people feel stuck in their personal lives, feeling anxiety about their future, trapped in the same routine, and more loneliness than ever before. We want to break free from this world and forge something for ourselves. We want to have control, we want to have purpose, and most of all, we don't want to die knowing that the only impact we've had on this world is being its personal punching bag. But here's the thing. Even though we get the satisfaction of watching what we want to do, we would be oblivious to the messages these types of stories are trying to tell us. These are cautionary tales at the end of the day. They're here to give us the satisfaction, but they are also here to tell us when our want and need for respect, money, loyalty, love, whatever the case may be, has to have its limit. Because if we keep wanting more, at some point, we become everything we hated about society. We become our very own worst nightmares. We become the douchebag swerving in and out of traffic. We become the asshole boss who rains terror on our employees. We become the violent abusers. So as we sit down with our chips and join our crime media, we should always ask ourselves what the real takeaway is from these stories and how we can each learn from them to keep our lives just a little less dark and just a little bit more hopeful. Because at the end of the day, when we feed our dark sides, we usually don't get anywhere. So let's try to keep our dark fantasies contained through the media we love and move on from our issues and use this genre as a way to heal our egos, our regrets, our anger, and our desire for power. At the first dawn of the morning, we closed all the massy shutters of our old building, lighting a couple of tappers which strongly perfumed, threw out only the ghastliest and feeblest of rays. By the aid of these, we then busied our souls in dreams, reading, writing, or conversing, until warned by the clock of the advent of the true darkness.